Legal is not the same as ethical. Let's explore. Every act of living involves choices, and every choice makes reflects our values. Every choice we make reflects our principles. Every choice we make reflects our compliance with law. Now, the larger question is, law also guides our actions? Ethics also guides our actions. What's the difference? Are they connected? And what is interesting is law and ethics, they guide you in your personal life also and professional life also. In today's episode, we'll explore these connections. How closely law and ethics are connected, what is the difference between these two, and how these two impact our lives. We'll explore this today. Before we get into exploring the differences between law and ethics and how both of them impact our decision making, let's define both the terms. Law may be defined as a system of principles and rules of human conduct prescribed or recognized by a supreme authority and includes criminal and civil law. In contrast, ethics is a study of standards of moral judgment and conduct. For individuals, this is called personal ethics. For a professional, it's a guiding system or codes of ethics. Now that we have defined ethics and law, let's get on to understand the difference between these two terms. Speaking of differences, there was a question in GS4 ethics somewhere in 2015, and that question was in 50 words, where the students were asked to distinguish between law and ethics. So this section will help you in answering that question also. When we say differences, the first big difference here is the very terms right and wrong, legal and illegal. These are two different things. Law focuses on common good, or I should say, laws focuses public life, whereas ethics focuses more on your personal life. In other words, the moment you step out of your home and you come into streets, you are in the purview of law. Law is an enforceable set of rules that applies to everyone. Whereas ethics is more or less personal. It's about how you live your personal life. Law and ethics, they share a very interesting relationship. There are some actions which are legally acceptable but morally questionable. For example, slave trade in US. It was absolutely legal but completely unethical. Can you imagine buying and selling human being? Absolutely unethical. On the other side, there'll be some actions which are very ethical but illegal. So law and ethics, it's a very tricky relationship. Let's explore the first category of action. An action can be illegal but morally right. For example, in 1939, Germany, having a Jewish family at your home was a punishable offense, was illegal. But there were a lot of Germans who thought helping the Jews were morally acceptable, so they did help them. So what I'm trying to tell you here is sometimes non-conformity with law is acceptable. In fact, there are situations where non-conformity with law or doing something illegal is more acceptable than anything else. As Mahatma Gandhi notes, refuse to obey the terrible laws and accept any punishment without violence. The key word here is refuse to obey terrible law. A fine example of refusal to obey terrible laws is Vernacular Press Act. You know, before independence, there was a horrible act called Vernacular Press Act. And this was during Lord Lytton's time, if I'm correct. And there was a massive protest against it. That's what Mahatma Gandhi said. Refuse to obey terrible laws. And later, fast forward later, Martin Luther King Jr. endorsed the same opinion. And there's a very famous letter he wrote from Birmingham jail. Let me elaborate on that. Martin Luther King Jr. noted, there are some laws which are ethically correct. They have to be obeyed. But there are some laws which are unjust. and they have to be disobeyed. Now, the larger question is, what are the unjust laws that have to be disobeyed? One. Second, what makes a law unjust and worthy of being disobeyed? So, what makes a law unjust? Let's understand Martin Luther King Jr.'s perspective. The first condition: laws are unjust when they are not consistent with universal ethical principles. Laws are unjust when they degrade people. For example, laws supporting slave trade. Laws are unjust when they are imposed on minority groups but are not intended to apply to everyone. That is when laws are selectively applied on some groups only. Laws are unjust when they're imposed on groups that are not allowed to vote or are not allowed to have a voice in laws they are required to follow. And lastly, sometimes just laws can be used in unjust ways. Let's explore the next one: actions that are perfectly legal but ethically questionable. For example, insurance brokers are not legally required to take care of customers' interest or promote customers' interest. So, for example, an insurance broker pushes his client to make some bad investments so that he can make maximum commission. Legally is correct, but morally his actions are questionable. Let me give you another example. A CEO of a company, he lays off 125 workers and he saves a lot of money. And legally, he has the power to lay off these employees. And after laying off 125 employees, he saves a lot of money. And whatever money he saved by laying off 125 employees, he uses it to increase his own salary. At the same time, increase the salary of top management. The CEO is legally correct, nothing illegal about it, but his actions are questionable morally. Okay, I have a question for you. Why do we need ethics when there is law? Think about it. There are a lot of legal scholars who have this belief: when I have law, when we all have law, what is the need for ethics? When there's law to tell you what is wrong, what you can do, what you cannot do, why do you need ethics? So what the legal scholars say, they're called legalists. What the legalists say is, when an action is illegal, obviously it is wrong. So why do you need ethics to tell you all that? We explored law is good enough. Now there's the other side, and this side says, no, law is not good enough. What this side points out is, there are some areas where law does not operate. For example, scolding someone in office, law does not cover that, but it's a very morally questionable action. So there are situations, there are actions that law does not cover, but morality covers, ethics covers. There's one more issue that the scholars who say, no, law is not good enough, they point out. What these people point out is, law is slow to develop. Law is more reactive. Judicial processes take a lot of time. So that's why primacy on ethics. For example, sexual harassment is always unethical. Laws took time to develop. Similarly, whistleblowing. We have laws, these laws are slowly developing. Till now, we just reflected on the differences between ethics and law. Let's get a relationship between these two. You know, it's a very close relationship law and ethics has. In fact, every country's laws reflect the ethical standards. In fact, we always say law is the moral minimum. Law always reflects the social values, the norms, ethical values of a certain culture. So that's why laws are reflective of ethical values. A leading jurisprudent, Edgar Bodenheimer, identified moral convictions and values, formed an important non-formal source of law. Since laws draw a lot from ethics, it can safely be said that laws reflect the moral values of the society. Please remember, what Bodenheimer is saying is, laws reflect the moral values of society. This can be a very important question in your mains. Be prepared for that. To conclude, let me give you a recap of the session. Today we discussed the differences between law and ethics. We discuss the relationship between law and ethics, and most importantly, we also explored the conditions in which unjust laws can be disobeyed. And I will leave you with a small thought. The thought is laws and ethics do overlap, but they cannot be used interchangeably. Remember that. Happy learning. See you soon.